Hi everyone, Sifu Ed here. Forgive me, I'm going to get rid of the shiny glasses, but I'm going to have to keep them on periodically. Look at my watch, make sure I'm not getting too long in the tooth about this topic. So, this is the second in our series on men's health after 40. And I am here in our meditation room. And this part of our series has to do with mindfulness and spirituality and how that applies in the context of health. Now, many times people don't really align or correlate the spirituality and the mindfulness practice, meditation, uh, as something that's pertinent with respect to what we do to keep ourselves fit. You can be fit without spirituality. You can be fit without believing in anything. So just go to a bodybuilding show or go to a fitness competition, and you can see tons of people who may or may not align with any particular tradition or have any practice when it comes to mindfulness. So, why would that be relevant? Well, what we look toward is the traditions of the East in particular, and how we can learn from them, learn from these ancient traditions that really aided the populace in being able to develop sustainable health that really had to do with keeping a balanced mind, a balanced body, and putting that all together. So if you do look, and I've done this with Sifu Joanne because she was in a figure competitor back in the 90s, and I've had a lot of friends that are in bodybuilding. There's absolutely nothing wrong with bodybuilding. Plenty of healthy people who are well balanced, but there are a lot of um, body image issues, dysmorphia, eating disorders that can be associated with these practices because we're purely putting the emphasis just on our physical being. And now, not everyone does that. I'm not saying that they do, but if we push too much to the extreme in any one area, then it creates an imbalance. And that's one of the things that we look at in the Eastern traditions is trying to really maintain that balance. So mindfulness is just simply the practice of being present. It's a form of meditation practice that comes from Vipassana. Vipassana is a tradition, comes out of the Theravada school of Buddhism, but they're in the modern context, particularly in the secular context, there's no religious connotation to it. But what it does is it affects the brain, and we know this from the scientific data. I work with the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA, and the scientists at the center, there's a great deal of data that shows how the practice of mindfulness creates a balance in the brain and creates an evenness when it comes to emotional states. So think about it. If you're constantly distressed, constantly worried, we tend to bounce from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, putting out fires. Now, is that mind state really going to allow us to put the time that we need into maintaining health for our body? We know clearly that our mind affects our body, and it's all the more apparent when it comes to agitation, to activating the sympathetic nervous system. And that's what begins to happen when we're in a state of stress constantly, which is what a lot of us are these days. Thinking about it, these mechanisms were originally designed for a fight or flight response. So the amygdala is triggering this response, and it's kind of a base brain function that ultimately we have to begin to override in order to maintain some sort of peaceful demeanor. So this was great when we were out hunting for animals and something bigger tried to hunt us and eat us, because it triggers a response. It triggers a mechanism that flushes our system with adrenaline, and it turns off everything in terms of our extremities and our and sort of channels, or no, I take that back, all of our digestive system, all of our kind of normal anatomic functions, and then it propels all of that energy into escape or fight. And then after the threat is abated, then our parasympathetic nervous system begins to take back over, and which is our rest and digest mechanism, as it's called, and which means that we're no longer in this fear state, this frenetic state. So our body begins to process as it should. The digestion, the reduction of the heart rate, the evenness. So if you think about kind of the hunter-gatherer stage being in a state of rest, ease, and then a heightened scenario where you're either hunting or there's some sort of danger, that was great for that time period, and it's a great mechanism for us as beings, as animals. But when you start taking that into a modern context, that's designed for short-term response. If we're constantly stressed, that sympathetic nervous system is activated constantly. And the correlation with those high levels of stress and disease states is quite common knowledge now. So if you look at the correlation between cancer, chronic disease states, and the correlate, which has to do with negative health conditions, there's a lot of data on that. So it's a pretty safe bet to say that reducing stress is going to improve our overall health. Not to mention just the pure logic of recognizing that if we're more relaxed, we're going to be able to allocate our time more efficiently. So then we can look toward the physical and begin to accomplish the tasks that are necessary physically in order to be able to get where we need to go with health. So that's the mindfulness component. How does that connect with spirituality? So spirituality is just simply a recognition that the material realm is not the only thing that exists. Now, whether you view this from the prism of quantum physics, or through a religious context, or from the perspective of mindfulness, which has to do with finding a sense of unity with everything that surrounds us, it's entirely up to the individual. And I think that there's enough information out there on this topic to where we could probably agree that it may not be particularly relevant which path that you choose, as long as it's not one that holds destruction and anger and rage and hurting other people as the common theme. So finding that creates a sense of unity. And this is the principle of enlightenment, of finding a sense of oneness, to where we feel it, we know that on a visceral level that we are connected to something that's greater than ourselves. And this is very real. You'll find many people have had this experience. In fact, most of us have. We've had these times where everything just feels perfect. A number of years ago, while in meditation, I had just the most amazing experience of, and this is relatively common among practitioners of these paths, to where everything just, it was a day like any other day. I was just practicing meditation and Qigong in my living room, and everything just melted away. There was no sense of me of a distinct identity of this I that I call myself, it it was just miraculous. This feeling of being connected to everything. And I know this sounds completely insane, but I literally could see through the wall. And I felt this unity with what I choose to call God. And it lasted for about 20 minutes. And I wasn't even I'm assuming that it was about 20 minutes. I mean, I think it was because I kind of know when I started meditation. And then I kind of came into a sense of I, again, having an experience of this. And then for about 3 hours, I had tears coming down my cheeks, and I had no idea that I was doing that. And for about 3 hours after that, I was stunned. I mean, stunned. And I recognized that this was truth. This was the path. And this is certainly an ongoing journey, a step toward what one might refer to as enlightenment. But the point being that there is a connectedness that sometimes we lack. You know, if we look at what's going on in the world right now, and I'm doing this video when we've had all of this difficulty with racial strife and inequity, if we look at it, it's a lack of unity, a lack of compassion, a lack of connection, and the recognition that we are all one. So this is a very relevant part, the mind state of being able to be well, and particularly as a man who's aging, because what we begin to look at is our death. I know many people who shove that to the side, won't consider it. I think that's a mistake, and I think the teachers of the past have considered it to be a mistake. There's a book called The Tibetan Book of the Dead, and one by Sogyal Rinpoche called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And one of the tenets of that path is truly embracing our death, so that when it comes, we're able to favorably pass without mental strife into what's referred to as the bardo in the Buddhist traditions, which is a phase before rebirth. But either way, no matter what you believe, I mean, I know that I personally want to meet death with peace and ease, if possible, because it's scary to die. But if we shove it back, and the only time we confront it is when it's about to happen, you really think we're going to be able to manage it well? Not likely. So I know these are a variety of different elements, and didn't know what you're getting into with this video, did you? But these are very relevant factors when it comes to our health. This is what we explore. So, begin a practice. Mindfulness, a spiritual tradition of your choosing, whatever it may be. But commit to it, not on a cursory level, not on the surface level. Yeah, my dad, God love him. Yeah, he was brought up. I was brought up in the Catholic Church too, and he felt if he went and did Mass every week, put the money in the collection, shook the Father's hand in the vestibule, you avoided hell for another week. I think that's a bit of a simplistic view. And he was a good man. I'm not saying he wasn't, but there's a lot of people who go through the actions, but then what's occurring internally really conflicts with that component. Well, you know what I'm saying. So an internal level of hypocrisy never creates calm and stillness. So I hope you guys have a great day. Hope that was useful to you. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, sifued@gmail.com, and I'll look forward to seeing you for the next in the series next week.